I'm Sonia Baghdady. Here are some of our favorite moments on Advocate Now. You were born in South Korea. By the time you moved to the US as a young child, you were already taking on so many responsibilities, and you've been pretty open about living in poverty.
Mhm.
Looking back on the hardships that you faced, did that at all inspire or affect your decision to get involved in law?
I think so. From a very early age, I kind of understood that there was a system in place. Probably a lot younger than I should have had to have known that. But there's a system in place, and it can work in your favor or it can work against you, and you just have to understand what the rules of the system are. And so, filling out applications for public assistance for my mom, who was very limited in English, kind of introduced me to that very early on. I knew which boxes to check to make sure that we got the proper type of assistance. And, and I understood that, the great thing about America is that you can, no matter where you come from and how you start the race, you dictate how your journey is going to be. So I worked really hard in school. I had a lot of help along the way, but it wasn't really until I got to, after I graduated from undergrad, I was working at a museum, and I got to work with the late, great Rosa Parks. And she is the one that really kind of gave me that final nudge to give me the confidence to go to law school. I always thought that I might go, but wasn't sure if I was smart enough or good enough. And, people like me don't usually go to law school. And she just quashed all of that noise right out of the gate and said, you go to law school. And so, of course, when Rosa Parks tells you go to law school, you go to law school.
What an unbelievable mentor to have. I mean, any other women who have influenced your career path or made you feel that your dreams were achievable?
The Upward Bound program was pretty instrumental in me even getting to college because, again, I didn't think that was something that was attainable. And they just completely, again, just told me, yeah, you're going to college. The only question you have now is which college are you going to go to? And there were some, there were male and female mentors I had in that program. In my practice, I was the first female and the first person of color at my firm, so I didn't really have those female mentors at my firm. But in the larger community, I connected with SNAWA, it's the Southern Nevada Women's Association for lawyers, and Barbara Buckley from the Legal Aid Center. She is such a ridiculous example of who I want to be when I grow up. She was the first female Speaker of the House and has led the Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada as the executive director for close to 30 years now. And she's just a female phenom.
Well, Jessamyn, the last time you were here, you talked about how the power that we each possess exists within our wounds. And I wanted to dive a little more into that. So can you first break down what that means to you?
Oh my goodness. I think that all of our power is in the hardest moments of our lives. And it sucks because you want to brush over it and be like, that thing didn't happen. I'm moving on. But whatever your most traumatizing event is, the most triggering thing, that was the moment when you were being tested. It is never a moment of weakness. It is always the moment where you are being tested to find out just how strong you are. And I always think that the proof of our purpose in this life is our survival. The fact that you continue, the fact that you did not fall, that you kept going. And I think there's a sizable argument that life never serves anything that you can't handle. Even at the worst part, it's always something that you can look back and be like, okay, so this is why that's happening. And maybe it's even on like a metaphorical level. But when we look at our wounds, especially if there's a physical wound, but emotional wounds run so deep, when we look at them and say, what is this offering to my life? What can I learn here? There's always so much more to learn from that place than there is from any moment of joy, any moment of happiness. All of that is kind of, it's wonderful to be happy, but really you learn about yourself when you're in pain.
Absolutely. You talk about the point of being here. The whole point of the human experience is evolution. And usually it is those traumatic experiences that help us to evolve. to the next level or to the highest version of ourselves. But how did you get to a point where you recognize that? Because I think that it's common and even normal to internalize our wounds and build homes out of shame and insecurity. So how did you come to the understanding that there is purpose in pain?
Hmm. You know, it is a process. It is something that I'm learning every day. I would not say that it's something that I'm like settled in. It is a constant progressive learning. And it started though when I was in middle school. I was bullied pretty harshly, pretty extensively when I was in middle school. And during that time, I mean, it made me feel like I had no worth and that my life did not matter. I had I mean, there was a lot of self-harm happening during that time. And I've continued to have depression and it comes in waves. And through all of that, the survival, the on and onness of it is what I think of it as. Like the fact that life just continues. That has made me feel like, okay, so there's a reason behind this. It's not just happening for no reason. And also that even after the worst things happen, there's always some kind of silver lining. And it's sometimes so macabre at the moment that you can't even process it. But it's like, wow, that's a rainbow. Okay, yeah, let me just lean into that rainbow.
And you've talked about the importance of highlighting queer Muslim joy. When people see queer and Muslim people thriving on screen, how do you think that can impact the way that they see themselves?
Absolutely. I think for one, we don't see that. We don't get to see that.
Yeah.
Representations of Muslims are already fairly stark. And so I think with that, it's just such a reminder of like the diaspora is beautiful and amazing, but we don't see them. And then even more so to see queer Muslims on screen is literally pretty much non-existent.
Mhm.
So, and I think both, both of these beautiful communities that I'm a part of and I love so much are historically marginalized on screen. So when we get to see them, in their joy, I think it is revolutionary and it is defying a lot of stereotypes and it lets someone know that we are human, which is truly one of the most important things.
Completely. And I want to talk about Shift, which is a consulting group that you created for racial and gender equity. You're doing such amazing work through Shift, but what prompted you to start it?
Shift was started back in 2017. It was it was a couple years after college. I was working with one of my co-founders right now, Valeen Mojado, on bringing sort of this freshman orientation that was a race, power, privilege 101 to UCLA. And in doing that, the intention, we were, sort of bringing arts activism into racial equity work. And so we were working on that. At the same time, Me Too had just sort of hit the fan. And I remember I was on set one day and I was going to be going to this racial, working on this theater project after, and just looking around and just understanding that like no one had the language to talk about consent. No one had language to talk about gender equity, to talk about, how systems of patriarchy and systems of uh, white supremacy play into consent and all those intersections. And so hit up my co-founder Valeen Mojado and another friend of mine who was doing DEI work at that time with another organization, Natalie Bui. And we were just like, let's do this. Let's make a space where we can talk about consent, talk about racial equity, talk about gender equity and all the intersections, and center the people that it impacts the most, which is the survivors, which is trans folks, which is Black folks and Indigenous folks and disabled folks, and break this down and provide educational tools.
I'm Sonia Baghdady. Thanks for watching and advocating. For more stories and content like this, visit advocate.com and advocatechannel.com.